So good afternoon everyone. We've looked at food and we've also looked at how food is broken down in the body. And in the very assessment of how food is broken down in the body, we've also looked at the remedies for healing that. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to go into now, what do you do for specific diseases? And this is a good time to start looking at this because everything we have looked at over the last week and a half, basically we've been looking at that. So would anyone like to suggest a starting point? I can suggest it if you like. What about, you had one?
Yeah, starting with a question because I believe you had a questionnaire, and then when they come, you ask them about.
Yes, that is true, and that will be available for you. So when a guest comes in, and we'll probably more talk about that when we look at starting the health retreat, but specific diseases. So what do you do for specific diseases? So think of a disease.
Pollen allergic.
Pollen allergies. So we'll look at allergies, and what you would do for pollen allergies, you would do for any allergy. Okay, students, this is where you're going to be telling me. So what's the first thing you do for an allergy? Yes? The laws? Absolutely. Make sure they're getting pure air, sunshine, and have a look if they're on any stimulants, and then it's important to come in with showing them alternatives and how they can come off the stimulants, what time are they going to bed, are they exercising? Often called the forgotten remedy, that one. And looking at what they're eating. I never say to people, do you eat well? I always say, tell me what you eat. Mm-hmm. Do you snack? And if they say, yeah, I snack to keep my blood sugar levels up. Tomorrow when we look at water, salt and exercise, you'll see that water can get your blood sugar levels up. And remember what we looked at today, where are your nutrients absorbed, students? Further down. So when the stomach's empty, nutrients are still getting absorbed into the bloodstream. Most causes of low blood sugars is dehydration. So yes, going through those. Now let's have a look at some specifics. What, say it's pollen allergy, what part of the body is affected most? Is that the sinuses? Okay. Is there any particular foods that they should stop?
Dairy.
The five.
The five.
The five, yeah.
The five, okay. So the five. So what are they?
Dairy?
Dairy, that's right. And I think a good thing to say is cow's milk's excellent milk for baby calves. And it is a very thick milk, and so it commonly causes excess mucus in the respiratory. What's another one? Wheat. And then you'll be asked, well, what's wrong with wheat? God made wheat. My answer to that is, he certainly did, but not this one. It's been tampered with, it's been changed. And that's where the book Wheat Belly will give you the background on that, which is important to know.
Sugar?
Sugar, yep. I wonder what I was going to write there.
Oat. Oat.
And remember with this one, works for some, doesn't work for others, but if someone's got an allergy, stop it all. And if they love oats and think, no, oats is okay with me, stop it. And then how long do we leave before?
2 months.
Yeah, at least 2 months, at least 2 months. And then that might be the first thing they try. And I can assure you, their body will quickly tell them. It's like my stepdaughter, Michaela, she had an allergy. So we stopped all the allergens, and she was going very well. The rashes had cleared up. She used to blow her nose all morning. Do you know people that blow their nose every morning? Every morning they blow the nose, blow the nose, blow the nose. She'd get itchy eyes. It was all clearing up. Within a month we started to see results. Then we went to a function and they had like a little little balls in a tomato sauce, and we didn't realise there were oats in them. Within that afternoon, all her symptoms started to come back. So that was very clear that she's not good with the oats. Isn't there a fifth? Well, of course there's a fifth one. What's the fifth one?
Peanuts.
Peanuts, yeah.
Peanuts, that's right. So what's wrong with peanuts?
Mold. Yeah, aflatoxin.
Yes, and they are commonly infected. And that's where you can, the China study is a good book to get the background on that. So we stopped the 5 allergens, and sometimes people say to me, but I like that food. So you know what I say? How much do you like your allergies? And it's not forever. So it's good to have things that you can say that won't offend them, and you're not coming down harshly, but it gets their mind thinking. So what about clearing out the sinuses? What could they do to clear them out? Yeah?
Hot and cold.
Hot and cold. That's true. Even hot and cold in the shower, that can be handy. Hot and cold on the shower. And what about steam? How would they do the steam? Bowl of boiling water and the good old Australian eucalyptus oil. 1 drop, yep. And that's usually about 10 minutes. Put a towel over the head to keep that steam in. I should know how to spell this if I'm an Aussie. Eucalyptus oil. How would they finish it, this hot steam treatment?
Cold.
Yeah, a wipe of cold, and that's where a lot of people forget that one.
The second U should be an A.
Should it?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
This is a disgrace that an Aussie doesn't know.
Americans and British.
Just to test us, I believe.
A wipe of cold. Anything else they could do? I don't know whether I mentioned this, so it could be my miss. I think we did. What's this little dip here called?
Oh, yeah.
Golden seal.
Yes, golden seal snuff. Now this isn't just healing for allergies, but also sinus problems. It can help very much with sinus. People say, how often do I do it? I say, well, you get to know what it does. And if it's particularly bad, they might do it every 4 hours. They might do it 3 times a day. They're working, they might do it before they go to work, when they come home from work. So there we've got a program for allergies.
I have a question.
Yeah?
So we know with allergies, most of the time it starts in the gut. So when they change and when they let the food away, so the gut will restore by themselves, or would it be an idea to give them slippery elm as well?
It certainly could be. It certainly could.
Could give slippery elm.
Yep. Okay, so we fixed the allergy, and this can be allergies to skin, allergies in any area. Well, what I say is there's 3 main allergens, 3 causes. Allergy to chemicals and mold and the foods. So because the hardest one for people to take is the food one, I usually start with chemicals. Have you had any exposure to chemicals? The next one is mold. Have you had any exposure to mold? And then foods. And then go through the 5 ones. And in case of sickness, what's the first thing you've got to do? Ascertain the cause. Then what have we got to do?
Restore our own habits.
Change habits. What's the other one?
Assisting the body.
That's the fourth one, assist. Oh, I think there's only one. There's another one. In case of sickness, the cause should be ascertained, wrong habits corrected.
Yeah.
Then, another one. What is it? Unhealthful conditions changed. So clean up the mouldy house or get out of the mouldy house, stop the exposure to chemicals. So unhealthful conditions changed. So Lydia, you had a question?
Yes, I'm just thinking. Oh yeah, no. So it doesn't really make a big sense, or it doesn't make sense to check it out what allergies they have. Just let them off from the food, and then it should get better anyway.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. But you always investigate, get their symptoms, because remember what we're doing? We're looking at history. What else? Symptoms. And also response. And remember, if the response isn't that quick, you might have to explain to them that this will take a bit of time. I've had people say, well, I stopped wheat and I stopped dairy. How long did you stop it for? 2 weeks. So the way to explain it is a slice of bread you can eat and it'll be out of your body in 24 hours, but the effect remains. So if there's an allergy, there's an effect. So at Misty Mountain Health Retreat, we used to do the live blood analysis. And you take a prick of blood, put it on the screen, put it under the microscope, and it comes up on a little television screen, and you see all the bloods. And it's dark field, so they've got a black background, but you can see the white blood cells really good. And the white blood cell that always increases with an allergy is the eosinophil, and the eosinophil is the histamine carrier. And so usually there's 2 eosinophils in the drop. If I see 6, 7 eosinophils, that indicates a sensitivity to gluten. If I see 10, 11 eosinophils, that's an intolerance. If I see 20, that is celiac. That is extreme. So I was looking at a girl's one day, but really and truly, you don't have to have that, because all it really did was confirm when I went through symptoms and history. So this girl said to me, whenever I eat wheat, I get diarrhea, I get rashes. So you see, her symptoms tell us that. Now we looked at her husband's, they're in their 30s, and he had just as many, and I said, huh. And he said, oh, what a load of rubbish. He said, I don't get rashes, I don't get diarrhea. And his wife looked at him and said, yeah, but you fall asleep in the restaurant. He's in his 30s and he's falling asleep at the table. So it can be brain fog, can be tiredness. So different people respond or react in different ways. So this was a problem that was bugging him, bugging everyone that knew him, but he didn't realise what it was. Do you know, the beautiful story about this couple was they now heard at the retreat how to stop the foods, what foods they could have as an alternative. Because many people say, well, what are we going to eat? And she also had a hormonal imbalance, so she started the program for that. So a year later, they sent us a photo of their little baby. And when they came to us, they thought they were unable to have children because, you know, they'd been trying for many years. So you get lovely ends of stories like that. So let's have a look at another disease. You might choose one that, you know, is touching you or some members of your family. Yes?
Parkinson's.
Parkinson's. Parkinson's.
And I guess Alzheimer and dementia can go on the same, or...
They can. They can. Do you remember the book I mentioned, Dr. Bruce Fife?
Yeah.
Dr. Bruce Fife, his book Stop Alzheimer's Now. And that also talks about Parkinson's. It talks about multiple sclerosis. And what he shows is that this does not appear overnight. It's usually a long time in the making. And I noted when I read Florence Nightingale's book, I love the title to her book. This is the title. She says, Nursing, What It Is and What It Is Not. That's the title to her book. And she says, disease is often years in the making. Years in the making. And so with Parkinson's, something has damaged the nerve cells. So what could damage? So we're looking at the cause here. What could damage the nerve cells? Sugar, not directly. Chemicals, yeah. And we are exposed to so many chemicals today. And neurotoxins in the vaccines. So the neurotoxins in the vaccines, with some it's thimerosal, and that's what they call mercury, formaldehyde, aluminium. And I think most people are aware now that cooking in aluminium saucepans is not a good idea. So these are the, environmental poisons. In fact, it's coming from so many places. And what was it? Is that an O or an I? Poison on. Aluminium in the underarm deodorants. See, the amount of chemicals that's coming into us through our personal care products. So a lot of people are being damaged by personal care products, hair dye, perming solutions. And I know when I was in the Bronx, all the ladies want straight hair. And in Australia, all the straight-haired ladies want curly hair. And they used to come up to me in the Bronx and just pat my hand and say, oh, beautiful hair. So I'd go to them and say, oh, beautiful hair. We should love who we are. We should love what we have. And we should love our age. I remember one 25-year-old girl said, I bet you wish you were 25. I said, no way. I bet you wish you were 68. You know what Michael says? You poor thing, you got a long way to go. We're nearly there. Not much longer now. Isn't that all the way you see it? So environmental poisons. Sorry, but that just looks so bad. I have to get that right. I think it's poisons.
Yes.
Another one is heavy metals. So where are we going to be exposed to the heavy metals? The mercury fillings in the teeth. Yeah, they're a big one. They're definitely a neurotoxin. So probably the number one cause is specifically your neurotoxins, your nerve cell. And what you've also got, here's your nerve cell. Here are the dendrites, the receiving stations. I'm going to be touching on some things I've already covered, but I know that I am guilty of information overload. So it doesn't hurt to recap a little bit. Now the covering to the nerve cell is 70% fat. Now do you remember that all cells, the membrane around them are 50% fat? So the extra 30% is this fatty substance here. So where people can be particularly susceptible to damage is when they're eating a lot of tuna. Remember the tuna has mercury in it. They've got a mouthful of mercury fillings. They're exposed to a lot of chemicals because they don't realise that their laundry cupboard is full of them and the food they're eating has got a lot on it. And they're on a fat-free diet, trying to prevent themselves from getting heart disease. Can you see that's a recipe for disaster? And that is why Dr. Bruce Fife, in his book Stop Alzheimer's Now, which again covers Parkinson's because it's nerve damage, he says coconut oil. Coconut oil is very high in medium chain fatty acids. Remember we looked at the fats, was it only yesterday? Medium chain fatty acids, and the liver converts those medium chain fatty acids to ketones. And ketones are neurohealers. And they're neuroprotectors. So that's how it's working, neuroprotectors.
Can you repeat what you said about the 30%? What was the 70%? What was the 30%?
Well, the membrane around every cell in the body is 50% fat. That's that membrane there, 50% fat. But around the brain cell, it's 50%, 70% fat. The extra 30% is that fatty myelin sheath right there. Oh, sorry. That's right. My husband would be horrified.
You won't tell him.
He'd only forgive me because he hasn't seen me for a while. 5, 6, 7, yes. So that's why it comes at 70% fat. And that's why this fat-free diet is so dangerous. And I believe a great deception of the devil. We don't need much fat. We do need a little bit. And we need to take fat the way God made it, which is in the foods. But remember, there's 2 fats that are made from the flesh of the plant, so they've been taken in as part of the diet for thousands of years. What are those 2 fats? Olive oil and coconut oil. That's right. Yeah?
But in my office I see it's more the wrong fat they're using and they're not using the right fat.
Do you know, you're absolutely right.
There are only a very small group who don't eat fat. I did not really come very much of my part into them.
Okay. Yep. I certainly acknowledge that. So what would be the bad fat, students? Margarine. What happens when you heat polyunsaturated oils? Yeah. Yes, you get that. Do you remember the shape of the polyunsaturated? That's called cis fatty acid. And then when it's heated or hydrogenated, what happens? It becomes the trans fat, and the trans fat are the dangerous ones. So the fried foods, a lot of people eat fried foods. Yeah.
So did you say that this approach is good for multiple sclerosis?
That's right.
And arthritis?
Well, arthritis is more inflammatory. So multiple sclerosis is eating away of that myelin sheath, and when that myelin sheath is 2/3 gone, there's your multiple sclerosis. But I met a lady who had multiple sclerosis. She had lost the ability to walk properly. She was incontinent. She was in her 50s. Her speech was slurred. And someone gave her the book, The Ministry of Healing. And she learned about these 8 laws of health, and she implemented those 8 laws. And when I met her, she spoke beautifully. She had no incontinence and she had no slurred leg. Just from those 8 laws. But we know now, you add some coconut oil. Now there's a nerve nourisher. Does anyone remember the nerve nourisher? St. John's wort. St. John's wort can be taken in a couple of ways. It can be taken as a supplement, and it can also be massaged into the spine as an oil. Now, we had a man come to us with Parkinson's. He came with his wife, the 8 laws of health, started little by little on the coconut. Now, what if someone just can't stand coconut oil? What do you do? Make a chocolate. Make a chocolate. Now, if they don't have cancer, you can put a little maple syrup in there and make it a little bit tastier. But if, you know, they have a brain tumour, we want to keep that sugar down. Because cancer cells consume 15 times the glucose of any other cell. Anyway, this man that came to our program, he was in his 70s. And when we looked at his history, looking at the cause, a lot of exposure to chemicals. Now, the man he works with also has a lot of exposure to chemicals, but he didn't get Parkinson's. He could have another problem. So that's what you'll find, that it differs so much. We are a combination of our genetics, our childhood. It's like my girlfriend. Her father was a chemist, and he thought he was doing the best for his little daughter because every time she got sick, he'd give her the latest drug. And when she was only in her 40s, her kidneys started to fail. She'd had so much medication. Now, I'd call that an accident, because the father didn't, he certainly didn't mean to harm his daughter. So you see, we are a combination of all that. I'm just very glad that I was one of 5 children and we didn't have very much money, so I had candies or lollies about twice a year. Fizzy drinks, you know, the sodas, once a year at the Apex Christmas party. So I look back now and I thank God that we didn't have much money and couldn't afford such little luxuries. But today it's almost as if children have everything, don't they? And unfortunately, when some people grow up like I did and didn't have all those things, they say, my child is going to have whatever they want. Oh, that's a mistake. That's a big mistake. But let me tell you about this man that had Parkinson's that came to our retreat and implemented all the things we're looking at. His specialist that he went to the specialist every 6 months. Once he started implementing this, he stopped deteriorating. And the specialist couldn't believe it. So every 6 months that he saw the specialist, in the last 3 years, he deteriorated more and more and more, came to Misty Mountain Health Retreat, learned how to give his body the right conditions, and he stopped deteriorating. He didn't recover. The nerve damage was so extensive, but he didn't deteriorate. So that was a great blessing. He died, I think when he was in his early 80s, but his wife was just so thankful. She said, I'm just so thankful that he didn't deteriorate anymore and we were able to manage. So again, recovery very much depends on how much damage there is. But the coconut oil, remember, it even has the ability not only to protect, but it can contribute to the healing. Yeah?
Should they be on a keto diet then?
A keto diet, that's a very good point. Let's write down what we do. We eliminate all known causes. Number 2, coconut oil. Number 3, 8 laws. The exercise is very important. I also read another book about a man who had Parkinson's, and he began a quite intense exercise program. He was sort of all over the place, but he didn't care. And that held him. The intense exercise he was doing stopped his deterioration. Because remember, the nerves are fed by blood. And when you exercise, you increase that blood moving around the body. And the plant keto diet. Yep. The plant ketogenic diet. Ketogenic. So when people get the Bruce Fife book, they often email me and say, Barbara, Bruce Fife says you've got to eat meat and dairy. And I said, oh, don't worry about that bit. Look at his theory, and his theory is correct. You don't have to eat meat, eat lentils, nuts, seeds. But get the carbohydrates right down. Yes?
Can, for example, wheat be a problem also with these nerve diseases?
Yeah.
Since it destroys
That's true.
the gut flora?
In fact, with any disease, I believe, in fact, we could put it up with the eliminate. With
Five allergens then.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Stop the 5, okay? But remember, the people will want to know why. And if down the track you think, what was that? You can go back to your notes. You can email Barbara O'Neill. So, Bengt, what you said is true. We could also do that for Alzheimer's, for dementia, for multiple sclerosis, for Huntington's chorea. And what I say to people is, this has taken many years to develop, and we're not sure of how extensive the damage is. But if you implement these things, it's quite possible you will not deteriorate anymore. That's a really good thing to say. And if they improve, wow, that's a little bonus. Because our disappointments are only equal to our expectations.
Yes. Have you ever seen someone be able to turn around multiple sclerosis? Just because I know someone who's in their early 30s and who has been diagnosed with it.
Yeah, very, very sad. So then, well, the story I just told you about the lady who got the Ministry of Healing, she was able to turn her multiple sclerosis around. And I remember when Michael and I first married, we were at a health retreat called Living Valley Springs up in Queensland. And there was a lady there who got out of her wheelchair and started to walk. It was quite incredible. Not from the week, but this was about the 3rd time she'd done the program. And every time she did the health program, she advanced a little bit more. So that brings us to something else too, and that's detoxing from the environmental poisons. And that's where the 2 days of juices and the steam baths and the colon cleansing, speeding up the body's organs of elimination. We talked about that when we talked about the liver. That accelerates the elimination, and that's where the detoxes help. Yeah?
We haven't talked much about this, but I'm thinking, can EMF radiation have a role to play specifically when it comes to neuro?
It absolutely can, and that's really new, isn't it? We weren't talking about that 10 years ago, but it absolutely is. It's called the silent killer. And, you know, our body has certain frequencies in it, and of course our nervous system is our electrical system, so that absolutely can play a role.
Do you think we can have a look at that a bit later in the program?
Well, I can't tell you the devices that you can use, but you can Google that.
Yeah, but I mean the effects of the radiation. What is known about that?
Well, again, it's very different, and it's on the nervous system, and it also depends on how many environmental poisons are in the body. The electromagnetic field can add to that build-up in the body. That's true. There was a question this side.
Yeah. What do you mean by stop the 5? Stop.
What do I mean by stop the 5, students? Remember the 5 allergens?
The 5 allergens.
Yeah.
Dairy, sugar.
Yeah.
And we were talking about the chemicals. I mean, it took a while to get into the body, so after 2 days, they can't all be out. Or?
No, they can't be. And they will not be. What you do is you start the process. So you start the process, and they can't all come out in 2 days or we'd be dead. So also explain this, the body lets it go little by little by little.
So how do the rest get out?
When you do the time restricted eating and have that 18-hour fast every 24 hours, so that little bit of a fast every night, little bit more, little bit more, little bit more. So little by little the body detoxes if you give it the right conditions, and it'll let it go in a way that will keep you alive. Yeah. Treatment was successful, but the patient died. We got rid of all their environmental poisons. Yeah, but they're dead. Yeah, but we got it all out. And the body knows. The body knows how to let it go little by little by little.
So we don't need to help it with spirulina or something like that?
Well, your green barleys or your spirulinas or your chlorophyll, those green drinks are the best blood cleansers. And when we went through the fast that our guests do, and we will recap on that when we look at starting the retreats and how to start the retreats, every second juice we give a green barley supplement. Yeah?
When the people, the guests go home, do they have a program how to continue?
That's right.
Because
That's right.
it's very important.
It's very important. It's very important. What I do is, remember in the questionnaire, you write down what they have for breakfast, you write down what they have for lunch, and then I look at what they usually do and I try and bring it as close as possible to what they usually do. Now, obviously, if they have a cup of coffee for breakfast, there's not much we can do there. But what I find is they're only having a cup of coffee for breakfast because they have their main meal so late. And what some women say to me, but my kids are at school all day. I've got teenagers, I've got a husband, they come home at night, they're hungry, they want something to eat. So I suggest they have a more substantial breakfast. Lunch might be light or it might be a little power-packed, this is Aussie term, tucker box or lunch pack, and we looked at that yesterday, what you could do for that. And then have the tea as early as possible. And maybe it's soup, and maybe the teenager, and it's lentil and vegetable soup, maybe the teenager will have 5 bowls, and maybe you'll have crackers there with avocado and hummus, and maybe the lady will just have half a bowl. So that allows the ones who are very hungry, but to have a little bit more. But you can still do it like that. One lady told me that her kids, when they get home from school, off the school bus, she has the main meal ready. And that's when kids are hungry, isn't it? They come home from school, they have their snack, and then they later, well, why not have the main meal then? But the father doesn't come home till 6 o'clock. Will heat up his meal when he comes home. And the mother might sit with the father and have a cup of peppermint tea, and he's happy because he just wants quiet. Isn't that true? He's had a very busy day and he just wants quiet. And the kids are quiet because they've been well fed, so they're off doing their own thing. So you adjust it to, and again, I mentioned this yesterday, well, could you do that? Well, what about that? Well, I don't have time to cook soup. Could you get a slow cooker and have it cooking all day? So when the family comes in, all they need is a bowl and a ladle. So you have a look at what would work. So we've looked at the neurological problems. But anyone who's got multiple sclerosis or dementia, I suggest they get that book and read that book. But I also warn them, I said, he will advocate meat, but what he's looking at is the importance of protein. And you can do it with the legumes. So is anyone thinking of another disease that we can solve?
Thyroid problems.
Thyroid. Okay, let's look at thyroid. Dr. David Brownstein. Now, Dr. David Brownstein is considered the expert on iodine. And he's written a book called Iodine, Why You Need It and Why You Can't Live Without It. And in his book he shows that overactive and underactive thyroid are usually both due to lack of iodine. So, and the name of his book, I won't write it because it's a long name, Iodine, Why You Need It and Why You Can't Live Without It. That's the name of his book. So number one, iodine. Well, how can you tell if someone needs iodine? Because iodine is the thyroid's number one food. And what about iodized salt? Did you know that within 1 hour of opening the iodized salt, all the iodine's gone? Did you know that there's no iodine in Celtic salt and there's no iodine in Himalayan salt? Because it evaporates. So when the waves crash, the iodine goes into suspension, goes across and lands on the soil. That's why the plants grown around the edge of a country near the sea are higher in iodine.
And when it's added to the salt?
Yes, that can help. But what we suggest is to buy Lugol's solution. Lugol's solution is a combination of iodine and iodide. And iodide is used mostly by the reproductive organs of the body, and the iodine is used by the other organs of the body. So Lugol's solution is a combination of those two. It's a dark brown fluid. And what you do is you put it on the inside of the arm, put 1 drop there, and it'll make a brown smudge or mark. And then the person observes how long it stays brown. If the iodine's gone in an hour, that person's very low. If there's still some semblance of colour after 5 hours, that person's got good amounts of iodine. So what do you do if it's all gone in an hour? You just put it on every day till it stays for 5 hours. That's simple, isn't it? So that's a good iodine test. Now, if the person's washing their hands a lot, they might put it on their stomach, or they might put it further up. Because if the body's low in iodine, it'll grab it and it'll grab it quick. It's as simple as that. Yeah?
Where are most people getting it from then?
Where are most people getting it from? Probably from the food that they're eating. That's why it's commonly known people that live in the central part of countries are often low in iodine. But that's not the only problem with the thyroid. So iodine is converted in the body to thyroxine. And that conversion needs selenium. And mercury fillings have an affinity for selenium. So when people have mercury fillings in their mouth, or they're eating a lot of fish, with high mercury, they are often low in selenium. So a person can have adequate iodine, but if they don't have the selenium, the iodine can't be converted into thyroxine. And to get all your selenium, you just need 5 Brazil nuts a day. Will give you the selenium that you need. So, number 2, eliminate mercury. Eliminate all exposure to mercury. And there's 3 places we can be exposed to mercury. Where's that? Yeah, fish. And the bigger the fish, the higher the concentration of mercury, because mercury is bioaccumulative. That means the bigger the fish, the more it accumulates. So fish, where else can we be exposed? Fillings in the teeth, the silver-coloured fillings. And the 3rd place we can be exposed is the vaccines. Yep. I can't confirm if it's in the COVID vaccine or not, but it is in the flu vaccine, so it's most likely in the COVID, but I cannot say for sure.
What about colors, painting the walls or something? Is there a lot of mercury in it?
Not any longer.
Oh,
Not usually.
okay, good.
Not usually. In about, I think it was about the 1970s, in Minamata Bay in Japan, they noticed cats doing backflips. All these cats were doing backflips. And they traced it to the mercury going into the water, and remember, mercury is a heavy metal. It's not in the seawater, so it's not in Celtic salt. It sinks to the bottom, and the fish, the plants take it up, the little fish eat the plants, the bigger fish eat the little fish. And they called it dancing cat disease. They didn't call it mercury disease. Now remember I said on my long flight from Australia to, where did I fly into? Dubai. I was watching some documentaries and I saw one on Minamata Bay. It was very interesting because it had the whole story there. And this guy came in as a journalist to report on it. And all these deformed children and deformed old people. And the company that owned I think it was an aluminium factory, and the waste that was going to Minamata Bay was the mercury waste. Just incredible. Took a long time before finally they acknowledged it and did something about it. But the fishermen's children, the fishermen themselves, but they called it dancing cat disease, not mercury disease. And you've heard of Mad Hatter's disease? You know, the Alice in Wonder, there's the Mad Hatter in Alice in Wonder. I haven't watched that or seen it, but you see, I remember from a child, the Alice in Wonderland, there was a Mad Hatter. Well, hatters went mad, the hatters that made the top hats, because they would glue the felt together with mercury. And so Mad Hatter's disease was hatters would go mad because of their exposure to mercury. So they didn't call that mercury disease either. They called it Mad Hatter's disease because mercury is a neurotoxin. So eliminate all exposure to mercury because mercury takes up the selenium, and selenium is needed to convert iodine into thyroxine. Number 3, high estrogen opposes thyroid function. So you can have someone with thyroid problems because they've got high estrogen. What would cause high estrogen? Any ideas?
Dairy.
What causes high estrogen?
Tin.
Contraceptive pill. Plastics. Especially those soft plastics that have got the non-or-phenyl. Remember the xenoestrogens coming from chemicals, coming from plastics. You've got your plastic fabrics. Remember your acrylics, nylons, polyesters. So eliminate exposure to mercury and eliminate plastics. And eliminate the contraceptive pill.
And dairy.
Yep. And one of the reasons for dairy and also eggs is because of the growth stimulants that are given to cows and chickens. And the growth stimulants is an estrogenic effect. And so what also needs to happen here is the hormone balancing program. And we looked at that. We looked at the herbs that you can use. We also looked at getting together and ordering a whole box to get at cost. The Anna's Wild Yam Cream from Australia. So that's an important part because your high estrogen opposes your thyroid function. These are areas that are not often assessed, but as I've just shown you, if you don't get these back into balance, you won't find a turnaround of the problem. And don't forget the true remedies, 8 laws. Thyroid controls metabolism. So if it's overactive, everything's fast, they can't eat enough food to because metabolism is going so fast. And it's really, they lose weight because everything's going so fast. So with overactive thyroid, it might need to be supplemented with juices. Definitely need 3 meals a day, maybe an hour before the meal they'll need a vegetable juice just to keep up. And how do we slow down when it's overactive? How do we slow it down? Ice. And how do we ice? 10 seconds on, 10 seconds off. 10 seconds on, 10 seconds off. You might do that for half an hour to really chill it. And if the person's underweight, which they often are with an overactive thyroid gland, you want to make sure the rest of their body's warm. You might put their feet on a hot water bottle or in a bucket of hot water to warm them up, but you want that slowed down. So number 6, over, we'll just say the overactive thyroid gland, ice. What about the underactive? What will wake it up? Cayenne compress. Will we do that in the morning or in the afternoon? Morning. If we do it in the afternoon, it'll wake them up and they won't sleep much.
Is that a compress, you said, or
Yeah.
internally?
Yeah, I think compress.
Certain, 3-4 hours. They might do it every second day. Sometimes if they do it every day, it gets too uncomfortably hot. And this is also where, especially with the underactive, exercise, the high intensity interval training. We're going to look at that in detail tomorrow. Because that high intensity interval training wakes up the thyroid gland because you're going so fast. Could you do hot and colds to the thyroid in the shower? That's another thing that could be done. So hot and colds. See, with the overactive thyroid gland, they're usually a bit underweight, they can't sit still, everything's fast, 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 fast. But with the overactive, yeah, that's it. With the underactive thyroid gland, they're often carrying excess weight. They're sluggish, they're slow, they have no energy because the thyroid gland controls metabolism. So, overactive, metabolism's too fast. Underactive is too slow. So we've got a program there.
We said also maca and evening primrose oil.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, the things we looked at with the hormone.
Yeah.
The Anna's wild yam cream, if that's not possible, you've got a choice of chase tree or maca, evening primrose oil.
And you said something like Don Quas.
Dong quai, yep,
Dong
that's
quai.
another herb that can be taken to help balance the hormones. We'll do one more disease and then we'll have a break.
Leukemia.
Leukemia. What's leukemia?
Blood cancer.
It's a blood cancer, yeah. So what we do for leukemia, basically we would be very similar to what we would do to cancer. So number one, the 8 laws, yep. But whenever I do the laws, what I do with people is I apply it to them, each law. Because if you just write down, keep the 8 laws of health, it's almost as if you've gone on, don't forget that, and they'll almost do that. But if you go specifically and say, check that you've got fresh air. Leukemia, make sure you have a sun bath every day. Get as much of the body in the sun as possible. And then go over if they are on any stimulants. They've detoxed while they're on the week, keep away from them. If you want coffee, because one lady said, Barbara, I love going out on the veranda with my husband early every morning and having our cup of coffee. So when I hear that, you know what I think? What are they like? Sitting on the veranda having a hot drink. So I say, well, could you do dandelion coffee? Could you do, could you do, And when you make all the suggestions, often they'll grab one of them. Yeah, I could do that. But my husband's going to have coffee and I love the smell. I said, well, enjoy the smell and drink your dandelion. I say to people, I walk past the coffee shop, stop. It's a nice smell, isn't it? Then I keep going. Because I don't like what it does to me. And as someone said, and I agree with them, it smells better than it tastes. I've never really been a coffee drinker. When I was nursing, we used to drink tea. Tea's the very English thing to do. But I don't think I've had a cup of tea for about 45 years. So when I say the 8 laws, apply them. Apply them to their condition. And then they become real to them. Going to bed early. Exercise, you would taper the exercise depending on the person, depending what they can do, their age. And if they are able to buy a rebounder, but if someone says, oh, I can't afford a rebounder, So then you'd look at another type of exercise. Is there a swimming pool near you? Could you swim? No, I don't like swimming and I can't swim. So you see what you're doing? You're finding something that they can do. Yes?
Yeah, a minute ago you mentioned sunshine and expose much of the body to sunshine. Can you explain why that is important in this case?
Why it's important in this case is because vitamin D is necessary for all healing. And vitamin D is found on the DNA. There are 2,500 receptor sites on the DNA for vitamin D. So in other words, your body can't function, it can't heal without adequate amount of vitamin D. And of course, you're looking at their skin, then you would advise on how they do it and what they do. But most people, in the privacy of their own home, they might have a private spot where they can expose their body, or there might be a room and not through the glass. Remember, the glass will only let the ultraviolet A through, and you want the ultraviolet B through, which means glass comes out. So the exercise you apply to them, to what they can do. Proper diet. So what sort of diet would we have them on? So how much glucose do cancer cells consume? 15 times. So what do we want to get right down? The sugars. That's right. And so for 6 weeks, no fruit. And if they say, but Barbara, God made fruit good, I say, He did. He made fruit excellent and it is delicious. But it's going to feed the cancer cells. It's going to feed the cancer cells. So one writer explained this diet as a sledgehammer diet, designed to give a sledgehammer effect to cancer cells. So remember your 20-step pathway in the cell gives 2 units of energy. And then the pyruvate comes out, then there's an 8-step pathway and it gives 36 units of energy. And this one is the oxygenated pathway, this one is the no oxygen. Remember, cancer cannot live in the presence of oxygen. And that it lives up there in that glycolytic pathway. It's not going to give a lot of energy. And this one is a fast pathway. So this is where it's consuming 15 times the glucose. And as one man said to me, Barbara, but every cell needs glucose. Yes, it does. Well, this one's a slower pathway. So it actually can wait for the glucose from the vegetables, from the legumes. But this one, he's a heavy feeder in high carb. So what can they eat? They can eat a lot of vegetables and they can eat the savoury fruits. What are the savoury fruits?
Cucumber, tomato.
That's right. Cucumber, tomato, cucumber, and avocado. That's an O. Pumpkin? Zucchini? Yeah?
Dark green leaves.
Lots of dark greens. And again, that's the beauty of being at the health retreat. You show them how. So what we often do, let's say we have, for breakfast we serve millet. One morning we serve millet and red lentils. So we have stewed apple and fruit salad to put on the millet and the pear cream and maybe coconut cream and all the sprinkles. And so we say, now the special people can have a little millet. They can have as much red lentils as they want. I've been given permission to cook red lentils tomorrow morning for breakfast. So you'll all have a taste. It's just delicious and so simple. I think you're having other things too, but you can have a taste of that. And then for the special people, I always say they're the special people, we have a plate that's got maybe cucumber, tomato, avocado, maybe some steamed greens or some steamed broccoli, maybe a tasty dressing. You want them to be happy with their food. What else can they eat?
Eggplants.
Yeah. Yes, they can eat nuts. Legumes, yes. Nuts and seeds. There's actually quite a lot they can eat. And you might need to show them how to make the legumes. And do you remember I mentioned the other day, I say this is what some people choose to do. Lentils is Monday, black-eyed beans Tuesday, cannellini beans Wednesday, kidney bean Thursday, Friday is tofu day, so it's alternating the legumes. And that's where recipes can be good. One of my books is here. I'm very happy for you to photocopy all the recipes out of the back of the book. There's no copyright on the book. Well, it says there is, but I wrote it so you can do. I was going to Fiji and I had a box of my books and the military came and said, "What are you going to do with these books?" I said, "Give them to my friend." He said, "You're going to give all these books to your friend?" I said, "That's right." And I picked up the book and it had a picture of me. I said, "It's my book, I can do what I want with it." He said, "Okay." And the books went through. I didn't know if I'd get away with them, but I did. So I gave them to my friend and she sold them and gave me the money. But I was giving them to my friend and she just happened to give me the sales. Otherwise, they would have either confiscated them or put a heavy, heavy tax on them. Can they have anything else? Well, they can have all the vegetables, yeah? Lemon's another savoury. And lemon makes the dressings really nice. Remember the dressing we talked about? Tahini, lemon, olive oil, crushed garlic, salt, drop of stevia. I find the drop of stevia in there just gives it a nice flavour. It's not too sharp. Because it's got to taste nice. Yeah?
Is there a stevia without the licorice, or how they say it?
The licorice.
Licorice, thank you. Taste? Because often when I use that, there's really strong taste.
What I find is that if you use too much stevia, it has a bitter taste. Because it's hard to believe that so little stevia could sweeten a dish. So put less in. Put less in. And that's what. Because some people say, "I don't like stevia." I say, "Why not? It's got a bitter taste." I say, "Aha, you're using too much." Because apparently 1/16 of a teaspoon of stevia is equal to 2 teaspoons of sugar. So you see, it's incredibly strong. You only need the lightest little bit. But it's a delicate, light sweetener. Just use it lightly. So at a stretch, a little stevia could be used. Any grain? A little. A little. So instead of 3 cups of rice and a cup of lentil dal, they can have 2 cups of lentil dal and just maybe half a cup of rice. So we keep the grain just to less. Now yesterday I gave you a recipe for waffles. Remember the recipe for the waffle? It was soaked chickpeas and millet. They could have that as bread. Now I think I told you earlier in the week that I put my husband on this diet for 6 weeks. because he had some very bad fungal issues, and that was his bread, and I froze a whole heap. So if I happened not to be there, he could toast a waffle, he could put avocado and tomato on it. That he can do that. But I have taught him how to cook red lentils, so he's getting a little bit better. So can you see the options to have options there? Because you've got to make it a program that they will do. Otherwise they won't do it. They'll say it's too hard. So the food's an important one. What else will we do for them? So with cancer, blood cancer, you want a blood cleanser. What's your best blood cleanser? Yes, that's a good blood thinner, and it certainly opens the bronchioles. But as a cleanser, your green drinks are your best. And remember, cancer hates an alkaline environment, so your green drinks not only cleanse the blood, but they also help to alkalize the body. Now, looking at the link between cancer and fungus, we want some herbs in there that will kill the cancer. So we're looking at the strong antifungal herbs. Could be garlic, or you don't use all your ammunition at once, or you could use portiaca. That can be bought in a tablet form, or sometimes you can buy antifungal herbs or antifungal mix that's got caprylic acid. And caprylic acid is an extract from the coconut, or oregano essential oil. And remember, you just start with 1 drop 3 times a day, and you can build up to, sometimes people can build up to 3 drops, but that's still a lot. Now you alternate every 2 weeks, or you could alternate weekly. That's why it's or. Another good one is olive leaf extract. So we've got a program. But what I always say to someone who has got serious cancer, I always say, this is a very serious condition, and we've seen 3 outcomes. Sometimes we see people conquer this. Sometimes we see 6 months go to 6 years. And sometimes we see the last days made more comfortable. So it's good to say that, because the disappointments are always equal to the expectations. And only God knows where it will go. And only God knows how serious the damage is inside. It's hard to say. So whatever the outcome, it's still a plus.